Hey everybody, this is Stephanie Gunner. I am the founder of Squad Beauty Professionals, a self-care salon here in Las Vegas, and you are listening to Business Fumbles.
All right. Well, welcome.
Yes, welcome,
Thank
Stephanie.
you. Thank you for having me.
So we're gonna really have a good episode, because we are like sitting down with someone that is truly a entrepreneur. And she has her hands in so much, and she's really involved with the community. So buckle up, people, because we're going to really get into it and we're going to have fun. So why don't we start off with you, Stephanie,
Okay.
telling people about what you do, the reason why you got in there, why did you choose to step out and do the business that you're doing?
Okay, so it's a funny story, and it's just got so many fumbles
Okay.
in there, so this is perfect. Okay, so when I was in high school, I always dreamed about being in beauty. Like, I used to always do all my friends' brows and makeup, and like when we had prom or any of those balls, like everybody would be like lined up in my house and I'd be doing makeup and stuff, right? And then my sister kind of had like the bootleg hair salon going too. So, I was always into beauty. Even like when we were younger, we used to like, that's probably why they have all those glasses and stuff in Walmart now, because we used to take all the makeup and we was all like just experimenting. It's crazy, I know. These are the entrepreneurial spirits that happen at a young age. Okay,
Yeah.
so but I also was very like an intellectual person, right? So I just, back then, I think just because I was trying to figure out who I was as a young person, I didn't want to go down this route of just it being beauty and just being another cute face. I'm like, I want to use my brain and, all those things. And really, back then you didn't see a lot of the beauty CEOs that you see now. Like, you
Yeah.
just saw a homegirl that was like doing hair at the local beauty salon. Like, there weren't really like CEOs and
Yeah.
really beauty entrepreneurs like that. So in that young age, I kind of got in trouble and stuff. I almost failed the 11th. Well, I did fail the 11th grade. I can't say almost. I meant to say I almost didn't graduate.
Yeah.
But I failed the 11th grade, and that made me kind of like wake up and be like, look, girl, what are you going to do? Because now you're not getting any scholarships.
Yeah.
Your parents, make a decent amount of money, because my sister had actually used my grandmother as her guardian when she went to college, and she had a full ride academic scholarship. For me, that wasn't happening. I was like, now I'm sure my parents would have let me stay there, but in my mind I was like, when you turn 18 you have to leave. So I was like, okay, we got to figure this out. So I was like, what do I do? I ended up going to this charter school or magnet school that was in the next city over. Got a whole bunch of no license tickets for that, trying to get there. But I just knew at that point I just need to get a diploma. That place had like less credit requirements, and I could earn like a half a credit every 9 weeks or something. So long story short, I ended up getting my diploma and joining the Air Force, because
Oh,
I was
okay.
like, okay, this is the option that I have. Let's see what happens. I had cold feet until the day I left, but I was looking around and I was like, you know what? All of this is gonna still be here whenever I get back if things don't work out. And a lot of my friends end up going down the wrong path. Just where I'm from is just normalized this like lifestyle or whatever. Is just not progressive though. Really
Mhm.
small town. So I left, and I had great years whenever, my early years when I was in the military. I learned a lot of self-discipline that I needed, obviously, because I was
Mhm.
already, but I was always an intelligent person. So, you know, I kind of zipped through the ranks and everything, and I really learned very fast. But my career didn't go like most military careers. I just kind of got stuck in Nellis. So that's how I ended up in Las Vegas,
Uh-huh.
was joining the Air Force and this being my first duty station. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Okay.
So
Originally, where were you?
I'm from Texas originally. Yeah,
Oh,
Southeast
okay.
Texas. So a
Texas.
small
Yeah.
town called Port Arthur, Texas, about
Uh-huh.
90 miles east of Houston on the
Okay.
Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, so a really small
Yeah.
town, about 50,000 people max on the
Uh-huh.
population. But
So
So
how can you find trouble in such a small?
because there's nothing else to do but
There's-
get in
you-
trouble.
It's
Oh.
true.
You know what I'm
Border
saying?
towns, you just get in trouble. I've heard a
Yeah.
million stories. I already know.
Yeah,
I
okay,
already know.
okay.
I have a lot
You
of friends
know,
from Laredo.
I feel like being here, you look at the strip, you can
Mm-hmm.
see success. You can see that there's possibilities, that there's, opportunities, things like just being out here,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm sure there's still people that don't even see the strip whenever they live in Las Vegas. But I feel like you can still see that there's opportunity. Where I'm from, the top paying jobs were working in the refinery, working in a prison, or working in a hospital. And that's pretty much it, So
Okay. That makes
um,
sense.
yeah, you just kind of, it's a lot of drugs, it's a lot of crime. So it's like, you just kind of fall into it, I guess, But, and then when you're young, you trying to figure, we always want to be grown. Now I'm just like, man, I wish I could just be a kid again. Like, I don't want to be a grown up,
Yeah.
But, long story short, my time as I progressed in the military, I just started growing into myself as a woman, just finding my own individuality. Really my spirituality kind of really led to me like really not wanting to be in the military anymore. I was just kind of had a more conscious mindset. And, I didn't want to be just part of a institution that was just so like suppressive, just of your individuality. Don't get me wrong. I met a lot of amazing people when I was there. I learned a lot of good lessons. A lot of the things that I learned through process improvement and things when I was in the military are things that I apply in my business today still.
Right.
But there's still that other side of, you're leaving your family. Because even though I did not leave this base, I was, deployed twice. Once whenever I was single, didn't have kids. Once when I was married with kids. And it's difficult, And I started realizing, like, as a mom, I don't want to be away from my kids. I want to have more flexibility. I was dropping my kids off at, like, the crack of dawn. Like, it's still dark outside to the CDC, daycare, whatever. Going to work for 7 a.m., working until 4, still staying late, maybe 5:30, then going to pick my kids up. That's 12 hours. They basically would, even when they got older, they would go to daycare, they would get bused to school, then bus back to daycare, and then I would pick them up from there. So, my kids are so resilient too, like from that, I feel like, because just military children are so, adaptive.
Yeah.
So like what's going on around them. But I just really felt like I was making a lot of sacrifices. I get emotional even thinking about it because it's honestly one of the like things that probably kind of like opened up my eyes to like what's really important to me in my life. When you go, I think it is still a good experience though, because you may not realize that until you go overseas and you go to a third world country, or you go to where I was, which was across the Persian Gulf from Iran in Qatar.
You
And
need
in
some
Qatar,
Kleenex.
oh yeah, right,
She's
it's
getting
nice.
emotional.
It's nice in Qatar. Like, this is real, okay? These are real fumbles,
Fumbles,
right? So, we, the city is beautiful, the Qataris are very, friendly people, like, but, when you're military, you're not in the city. Like, you're in a desolated area. We were living in 10 by 10 trailers, using Cadillacs, basically is what we call the trailers that are the bathrooms. So it's a community, like, trailer of showers, community trailer of toilets, whatever, right? So it's a very enlightening experience because, we take a lot of things for granted here, and I want to say the biggest thing that I take with me now, because I know, we have our complaints about our government in America and things like that. But as a woman of color too, we have the opportunity to do things that in those regions you wouldn't be able to. When I went in 2007, there were still women. They were like walking 5 feet behind their husbands, head down, covered. I learned like why some people were like fully covered and some were partially covered, because it's based off of the strictness of the family, right? Because some people would have like only their eyes. Some people would have like the full thing covered. Some would be, the face would be out, And so you just kind of really get a lesson in gratitude and gratefulness and being thankful. Like, TMI, but I was just happy to sit on the toilet whenever I got home because, you're using a Cadillac with all these different people. I used to be scared something was going to like plop back up out of the toilet and I was going to have some disease or something. Like, seriously.
Good Lord.
The things that we take for granted, hot showers, like, when the hot water is out in a deployment area, it's done. Like, you missed it. So
I'm familiar with your stories because, my husband was here.
Yeah.
He was in the Air Force too.
Mm-hmm.
And he was deployed here.
Yeah.
And so that's why we ended up moving here because he
right.
was
And the
familiar
family makes so
with
many
it.
sacrifices.
Yeah. He was familiar with it. So
I think that growing into a woman and wanting to be more of a family woman and being with my kids and spending just doing what I wanted to do. I was finally figuring out who I was. I had already got my degree while I was in because it was 100% tuition, so I don't regret anything, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was a great, valuable time for me, but also, like you said, I'm a community person. You know, I love people. One of the things that kept me in the service as long as it was is because I love leading people. I love molding, encouraging, mentoring. Like, I'm a Leo, so I'm a natural, like, leader, so it's like, and leaders make sacrifices, but.
At what time in your life did you start, your studio? At what time? Like, was it immediately when you finished?
So when I got, and funny thing is I actually got kicked out of the Air Force.
Kicked out?
Yes.
How?
So funny story. I was getting there, guys. My mental health had actually deteriorated extremely while I was in the service because I was such a helper. I was like always, in the Air Force, 3 core values: service before self, integrity first, excellence in all you do. Right. So I was always, like I said, I'm working late. My kids are, I experienced a lot of mom guilt. Sometimes you feel like you're the only person that cares. You're giving so much and just things changing. But ultimately, I was just very unhappy being there, right? And so I really just stopped caring. I was trying everything to try to I had applied at different programs to kind of like help me get out early, but nothing was really working. So this is a lesson in manifestation too, right? When you are saying like, I hate this, I don't want to be here, the universe does not care how it's gonna make that happen. So next thing you know, I just really stopped caring about things. I had always been around marijuana and stuff, and then it became legal. My ex had actually got kicked out for the same thing. My best friend had separated, and here I was, the only one that was still in the military, and I was miserable. And I was like, well, dang, they doing all right. He don't even have a degree and he's doing fine. I was like, at least I have something to fall back on. So I just really stopped caring. And, long story short, I popped positive on one of my drug tests. I got court-martialed. I'm technically a convicted felon because I was convicted of wrongful use of marijuana.
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so no.
She's here. Now she's here.
I really seriously.
Yeah.
I want to get into that because the reason why is because my husband also was discharged. And he doesn't discuss what happened. I don't know what happened. But one thing that was said was that you give them, and I just want to hear this from you.
Yeah.
When you're in the military, you give 150% of your abilities because they push you and they force you to do those things. And one screw up and all of that is thrown out the window. And my thing is, why is that? If you're given 150, why does one mistake like that, eliminate?
It kind of depends on what it is. They got zero tolerance for certain things, and that was one of the things I got tired of. I was working with a lot of people who just weren't pulling their weight, right? But just like they can't just like you can't quit, they also can't fire you.
Mhm.
You know, so it's like you're pulling the weight. I was working and I was outranked by people who I was over them. Like they got paid more than me, but I'm still
But they were
supervising them.
men, right?
You know, and
Be honest.
majority
they were
of the
men.
time it was going to be that because I was in maintenance, you know, but that's not always the case. Like when you're working in a hospital, you're working in, you know, the admin section, there's more women. But I worked in a male dominated career field. I worked in back shop maintenance, doing calibration on test equipment. So yes, but there's also alcohol, which is they're way more lenient. You know, it just depends on what it is, but there are things that there's zero tolerance for, and marijuana is one of them. Okay. So long,
but okay. Wait a minute before you move on.
Okay.
And this is a point that I want to make because so many people today, they, you know, like in the workforce, they marijuana is legal, but yet you can still get fired from your job if you test positive for it. You can, and like you said, in
Still
the
not
Army,
federally
it's
accepted.
zero tolerance.
Yeah.
It's zero tolerance in the Army.
Yeah.
They
Number
probably should
two-
do some studies and give people weed because I was actually excelling. You know, I was doing great. But you know, it all happens for a reason because honestly, I had gotten so tired and I was feeling like that person. I'm like, I'm giving all, I'm getting nothing back, you know? And God works in mysterious ways because even though that could have made me bitter, it didn't. When I got court-martialed, even though the rules are the rules, I'm still being in front of a jury of my peers, right? Which I chose to go with the officer panel because most officers have been to college and most college people have smoked weed.
Yeah.
So if these people are seeing my accolades over the last 12, 13 years and they literally see that I've never been in trouble, I've excelled, I've always had, you know, just was a top performer. So I guess my work that I put in actually did do something for me because when I was court-martialed, although I was found guilty, I was not punished harshly.
Okay.
The prosecution was actually asking for me to be bumped down to an airman basic, which I was an E6 with a line number for an E7 at the time. So, but they wanted to knock me down to a E0, right? They wanted to do a forfeiture, 2/3 forfeiture of pay. They wanted me to do confinement up to 12 months. Bad conduct discharge as well, and hard labor. So all 5 of those things for some weed, right? Luckily, I was found guilty, but the jury actually only sentenced me to have 1 stripe removed. So I went down 1 rank from an E6 to an E5. And then they had given me hard labor, but nobody knew what hard labor was. I had also been to the first sergeant symposium prior to that, and you know, I had kind of noticed that hey, they're actually kind of handling things kind of wrong. They had actually started executing my sentence before it had been closed out at the wing. But I just kind of sat back and didn't say anything because I knew that I would have my chance to submit clemency, right? So in that clemency request, I basically was being a business person. And I was like, hey, look, you guys are going to have to continue to pay me. If I do hard labor for 3 months, you're also going to have somebody watch me, right? And take them off of whatever work that they're doing because now they have to escort me. You know, I'm willing to waive my discharge board because I still had the opportunity to go to the discharge board even after I had got court-martialed, right? So being court-martialed and sentenced doesn't mean you're automatically discharged, right? You can still go to a discharge board and continue to try to fight. But I already didn't want to be there. So I was like, this is my opportunity to go,
out.
right? It isn't what I wanted it to look like. But it's still my opportunity, right? And I did a lot of research. I found out that I would still, you know, get a lot of my benefits because I had 2 previous enlistments already.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm done fighting. Like, I will waive.
Is that for most people though? Because even though my husband was, he still has his benefits too.
Yeah, and you know what?
And I don't know what it is because he never talked to me about it.
A lot of people actually don't even know that they're still entitled to their benefits because my ex at the time, you remember I told you he had also gotten kicked out, right? But but he had a previous enlistment. When he applied for his educational benefits, he was denied because he did not apply properly. You can't apply for the term where you were discharged under honorable conditions. You have to apply for the previous one, because technically when you're re-enlisting, you're discharged and re-enlisted the next day. You're honorably discharged and then re-enlisted the next day. So that is actually, my re-enlistment paperwork was the paperwork that I had to use to get my benefits. And a lot of people don't know that. I've helped several people get their educational benefits that had a previous enlistment because they had applied prior and got denied because they didn't know. But I was like, this doesn't seem right. If I, serve and I decide to stay, right? Why don't I get this? Because if I would have just done 4 years and left, I would have got this, right? But now I've decided to stay, and then this enlistment is different, so I'm not going to get. I knocked on so many doors. I talked to so many people, and there was a lady who was, at the time, I think it was like called the Community Commons on base, and she was like a VA rep, and I talked to her, and she was like, yeah, this is the way you have to do it. You have to submit your claim for the GI Bill, right? Mm-hmm. But this has to go through this other, avenue to close out. When you submit for the claim, there's nowhere to upload documents or anything. But in this other platform is where you have to upload that paperwork and explain, because when they're going through and they're looking, they see general discharge denied. They don't look that you've been in for 10, 13 years. They don't, they're not going that far. So she actually really helped me to be able to get those benefits. And then I just, continue to help other people who are in the same position.
And that, you know what? That's something that, should be out there, because I know a lot of people, that's in that situation. And like you said, you still got your benefits.
And I use that to get my esthetician license.
Oh, that's what you did?
Yeah, I use my GI Bill to get my esthetician license. I also use my GI Bill to partially pay for my permanent makeup training as well. Mm-hmm. So, but whenever I first got out, it was June of 2018. Mm-hmm. And in about November of 2017, which was the month before I got court-martialed, I started writing a business plan. And it was, I started doing research. I knew I was getting out. I had my degree in business already. I knew I wanted to start my own business. And I just started doing research on what.
So you never went into tried to find a job?
No.
Oh, wow.
No. You went straight into running your own thing.
I went straight into business. I want to say I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, so that kind of helped, right? Because I'm like, y'all, I don't need y'all. But I kind of felt like I was hitting the glass ceiling anyway, where I was. And I mean, I would say that I've proved that to be true.
That's like, being honest, a lot of people
don't turn around from that.
They don't no. Because they go through so much, and they're so
much shame
and and anger.
Yeah, shame
and anger.
Yeah,
but the fact that you were like, okay,
I'm like you
this
said,
ain't gonna stop me.
Y'all. The thing is.
This ain't gonna stop me.
The thing is, and I think you did this too, you could take that anger, you can use it.
Yeah.
You can motivate yourself to get out of that shameful position. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people let themselves, that's their identity afterwards. Definitely. I messed up, and that's what it is.
Definitely. But and they don't return from that.
And that mess up,
it ruins their self-esteem and their self-confidence, and then they just kind of don't, But you have to really, I always tell people, in those situations, that just wasn't you're still a great person. That just wasn't meant for you and for your life. Like there's so many other avenues that you can go and explore. And I'm happy that things happened the way that they did, because I would have never really pushed myself. I actually got into an argument with one of my friends maybe a few years before that, because she was like, we were all we were drinking wine, and we stopped drinking Stella because we would always start crying when we drank Stella. But that night we were hanging out, and she was like, saying like, I was telling them what I wanted to do when I got out, right? I was like, I'll be 38 when I retire, because I joined when I was 18. I was like, I'm going to use my degree and start my own business. And my friend was like, well, I don't want you to feel like you have to wait until you get out of the military to like pursue your dreams. And I'm looking at her like, look, I got my figured out. I don't need your advice. Yeah. Like, I know what I'm going to do. Okay? Like, shut up. Like, I really had an attitude. Like, and now that I look back on it, I'm like, she was right, you know? I didn't have to wait until 20 years and keep that ball and chain and be miserable and, deal with all this stuff. Like, I'm a huge advocate for, I'm not putting up with anything I don't have to. I encourage people to walk away from situations. You don't have to put up with anything that doesn't feel good. It's not the right thing if it doesn't feel good for you. We always think we're doing the right thing by staying in something. And it's like, no, this doesn't feel good. I need to, I gotta go, right? So
I think that's good, because what it also tells me, with me sitting here listening and things that I didn't know, now that I do know, it's like, oh wow, this is really, But one thing that I feel that you have and a lot of people lack is taking responsibility for your part in the whole situation. Like, I know I did this.
Yeah, people don't grow because they don't take accountability.
Right. They don't take
When you blame everybody else and you can't fix everybody else, then what's the point? I can only fix me.
Yeah.
My control stops at my fingertips. So if I'm going to blame everybody else, I don't have no control over them,
And that's why you're able to sit here. And although it's emotional for you, you could talk about it. Hey, this is my life. This is what I did. It's taking the responsibility. And two, you came out and you said, when I come out, I'm going to start my business. You did exactly that. So now let's get into that.
Okay.
What are some of the fumbles that you had to deal with when you stepped out? Because you're still in business now. You're still doing it.
Yeah. There's still fumbles.
Yeah.
There's still fumbles. I'm like, dang, does this stop? And then even us, we've talked before being on cameras, you're like, no, there's always, there's always going to be something. And we don't talk about that enough. Like, and it makes us ready to give up whenever we run into a fumble because we think we're the only one that's messing up. And it's like, no, this is like such a learning process. And I love talking to people like you who have been in business for a while. A lot of mentors that I've met just speaking and stuff like that. A recent conference that I went to, a woman named Wendy Vaughn. Oh my gosh, she's so awesome. Shout out to Wendy. She actually, oh God, I don't know what I had on my finger, but I'm making myself cry more. It's like,
I was wondering, like, do I need to get a tissue? Are you okay?
I'm like, right now.
No, it's like, your story is it's great. So this is good. But like we were saying, with the business, like there's still fumbles. And sometimes we look at a person, because when I talked to you and you were telling me some of the things, and I was just like, what? You seem like, oh, it's all together and everything is so good. And then when you were telling me, I was like, what you talk about, Willis?
Right? Yeah, because
it it didn't appear that way.
I also don't like to focus on the negative too. There's always, you can always find something negative. You can always find something wrong, but I'm a huge advocate also for, you got to work with what you got. We are so busy always saying where we lack. Or I don't have this support and I don't have these resources and I don't have this that so-and-so has. And all the time you think so-and-so got something and they don't have nothing.
Right.
So it's like you again, you have to take that accountability and say, well, are you looking at yourself? You thinking that you're not where you're supposed to be because somebody else has got something that you don't have. But what do you have? What are you working with? Because it's somebody looking at you like, well, you got something I don't have.
Exactly.
And we always, that's the biggest thing as a business owner, is being resourceful. Like being resilient, like keep rolling with the punches. Like if you're not the type of person who thrives off of problem solving, then entrepreneurship is not for you. If that makes you anxious, if that makes you scared, like, sometimes I think I don't like it when I'm in it, but then when I'm past it, I'm like, I did that, like, and so what Wendy was saying was, she has this $1 million company that she never expected to have, $1 million company, window replacement, 6 locations, across the US. And she's like, I needed to hear her say this. She's like, but I took a lot of L's. And when she said that, I was like, all right, I'm good. Yes, I'm taking some L's, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, like, I could not think of doing like anything else. Like, I wouldn't be happy, I wouldn't be fulfilled. I won't say that everybody's business is this way, but for me, my business really stems out of my purpose. Like, the things we talked about earlier, the shame, the self-esteem, all those things are things that really, we can be capable and have all the resources, but if we don't have that, we are immobile. Like, we won't move, we won't press forward, we are just stuck in our tracks and paralyzed.
Yeah.
A lot of the times by our fear.
Uh-huh.
A lot of the times by, you know, that lack mindset and stuff. So I think that her saying that, and this was back in April, I was like, I always feel like I'm in the right places at the right time
Yeah.
to hear what I need to hear when I'm on this entrepreneurial journey, right? It's like I'm just always like trying to align. And I feel like I felt that way recently with you know, things getting harder in business, and you know, I do a lot of, you know, work in the community, right? So I started thinking like, man, am I gonna be able to keep doing this? Like, I should probably be focusing on my business. Like, you know, like I need to, I can't keep pouring, you know, like, is this really making the impact that I wanted to make? And am I sacrificing myself in that space, you know? And
well, one thing that I will say when it comes to business is you have to find your, you know, you have to find your happy medium. Number one. The second thing I want to say to you is that, you know, with business, I know that it seems like it's difficult, but I see something sitting here in you that it requires you to have in order to be successful as an entrepreneur, and that's to have the passion. And so if you have that passion there, you know, because
I couldn't tell.
yes, you could tell because that passion is there, you know, the emotion is there. And sometimes when you have that passion, like with some of my clients, when they come here and I'm working on their stuff, you know, and this just happened last week when I got off vacation and I found something, and I was, you know, like, it seemed like I was angry, you know, because they were like, it was going to be okay. And I was like, well, it's not going to be okay because this happened and that happened, you know, and they were sitting there like, whoa. Okay, you know, in their mind, I can see it on his face, like, you know, well, it's my business and I think it's cool or whatever. And it's like, it's not cool because if this is not in line, that's not in line. And then if that's not in line, I'm not able to protect you. You guys have put me
that's
in a
how you
position.
are, though.
You
Everybody's not like
right.
that.
And it's like, I say, you put me in a position where I can't do my job. And it's important that my job is done good. Right. And so after it was all over and everything, and my employees was standing there and they was looking at me like, oh, okay. You know, like, I have my daughter here and she knows me, but she knew at that point not to say anything because she knew where I was at. And I was like, inside I was livid. But in the end, when we had the discussion and I fixed it and everything, you know, the owner said, man, I can see your passion behind it. Yeah. And he says, so I didn't get upset that you were yelling at me. He says, I was just sitting there thinking like, man, anybody would be a fool not to have somebody like that you know, because you're going to bat, like, to the point where, you know, if it's a third party, I'm like, okay, well, you could tell me that you're sorry, but what you're sorry doing for me and my client?
You really believe in helping businesses build financially.
Yes.
Like, you know, in our conversations that we have, you know, I told you, I'm like, girl, bookkeepers ain't doing that. They're not doing all what you're doing. I promise you. I know. Fumbles, okay? Fumbles with bookkeepers I've had. Okay? So no, you are so right.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that you have, that you have to leave here knowing that you're going to be fine because you have that passion. Yeah. And when you have passion, you know, it's not about the money that you make from the service that you give. It's about the service that you give and how it impacts that person's life. And that's something that you have to have as an entrepreneur because, like you said, there's many fumbles. Yeah. And you've experienced it. I've experienced it. You know, Tim has experienced it. Everybody experienced it. Yeah. But you keep going because that passion is there. Look, before you came, I was having a conversation with Tim because, you know, he's the producer. He's the person that's putting all of this together. And we put our heads together all the time, you know, and he's like, no, we're going to change this and we're going to do this. So we're at the point where we had so many things happen within our lives within the last few weeks. We were having doubts.
Yeah.
He was having doubts. I didn't know he was having those doubts.
Yeah.
I was having doubts. He didn't know that
I didn't know. None of that was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Nope.
He had no clue. But yet and still, we have in our village people that's like, they're saying, what are you talking about? You guys are fine.
Yeah.
You're going to have setbacks.
We need
you got to
those
do
reminders.
this. You got to, you know. And so that's why it's very important to have the right people a part of, you know, that's in that you talk to, that you trust, and that's gonna give you the best advice. Because all of them was saying, you know, like, no,
Y'all
you guys
tripping.
are fine. You got to do it. Because the first thing I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe this is God's way
and that's
of
kind of
saying,
where I was
you
at
know.
too.
Yeah.
I was questioning, you know, am I gonna be able to, and you know, but I say, you know, we have not because we ask not, because sometimes you just have to ask, like, hey, give me a sign.
Yeah.
Show me something.
Yes.
Let me know where I'm supposed to go. I need to feel like I really am guided by my heart, my soul, and my spirit. Like I really am. And so Spirit was like, all right, I got you.
Yeah.
You know, I was questioning it, and then I realized, like, I just had so many opportunities that came up for me recently, you know, with my community work, you know, and it was just kind of like the confirmation that I needed to know, you're going to keep doing what you're doing, how you're doing it, and you're going to be okay. Like, you, that is just one facet of you, you know, and it's like, it's always a balancing act, you know, and like I was telling them, you know, we get tired doing community work and stuff, but it's not me tired of doing the community work. It's me balancing the rest of my life so that I can do the community work, you know, because you just cannot underestimate, and I know this in my real work as well, working with women, working with young women on building their self-esteem, you know, giving them the knowledge that they need, you know, whether it be in their lives and their skincare routines, because we hook you with the outer beauty stuff, right? Because most of the time that's the first thing we do when we want to feel better. We at least try to look better first, you know, and just do something to try to make us feel better. And you know, the conversations that I have, the amazing women that I meet every day, like this is like the dream job. Like, why would I give up on this? Like, I'm able to hang out with my homegirls all day, even the girls that I work with, you know. I'm also providing a space for them to be able to carry out their dream, to share their gifts and their talents and be financially supported by doing what they actually love,
Right.
you know, with the girls that are there. But then also with my clients, it's like, you know, I'm giving them the tools that they need to feel more confident. You know, I've had clients come in and be like, I haven't left my house in 3 months. I just haven't been feeling like myself, you know. I just haven't been feeling good. I feel ugly, you know, if we just gonna be honest, you know, sometimes people tell me that, you know, and I literally have to be that person, like you're saying. I have to be that cheerleader. I have to be that reminder that you deserve to take care of yourself, that you don't, you know, you don't deserve this. You can walk away from that, you know, and be that encourager, and the same things that, you know, I need people to pour into me. I have to pour into
other
those,
people.
as well. And you said that the people around you are important, but the mindset is so important. And it's like you have to be, if you fall off from reminding yourself of those things, that's when the doubt creeps in. That's when you're not surrounded by other people that are always telling you to keep going. That's whenever it, you know, creeps in and stuff. And so I think the past couple of weeks, you know, I was awarded the Las Vegas Aces Women of Impact 2024.
I did not know that.
Just last
crazy.
night. Yeah. And then just last night, I took home the mentorship through entrepreneurship award from Tulips, you know, which is an organization that works with young women in the Las Vegas community. And I mean, they're doing amazing work with these girls, and they're putting those lessons, all those things that like I struggled with whenever I was that age.
Yeah.
There was a young woman, 16 years old, that was the MC last night, you know, just able to just really articulate herself, and just at a young age, it's just so like you have so much pride just seeing that, you know. And it's like and through my mentorship that I do weekly in the schools, we're on break right now because school is out, but you know, I'm working with 4th and 5th grade girls, and
that's something that I'm working on now, to go into the schools, you know, to teach financial
that's
literacy.
so important.
But the problem is like I think it's 2 right now that is like, okay, we want your program into the schools.
Yeah.
But and when I spoke to the person for it, he's like, oh well, we got multiple schools and they're all over or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, hold on. I think we didn't really think this out, you know, because that's not something that I can handle right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When he was bringing it up and he was like, well, you know, we can put it in there and you can travel. And it's like, hold up. Back it up.
Yeah.
You know, because like you said, we had an episode, I think it was episode number 4. Where we talked to the owner, and he was saying how he had to one of the number one things as an entrepreneur that they had to check was their time.
Oh yeah,
was with Mike.
I remember now. Yep.
And he said that, you know, in order for you to be an entrepreneur, the first thing to check is the time. And so listening to you and saying, hey, I got my business, but I'm also doing a lot of stuff in the community. And there's a lot of stuff that, you know, that people don't realize that I'm involved in. See, that right there is another component. It's the time. So you took you're managing, you're putting your time out there, and you saying, okay, I'm going to work my business this time. I'm going to work the community this time. And with you doing that, I think that it could help you even more.
So
if you create that,
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that the realization that I came to over the last couple of weeks is that my community work has opened up the opportunities for my business to expand, for my business to have reach, to be exposed. Like, you know, people know who I am, and I am connected to my business. So, the last couple of weeks, like I said, that was that confirmation. It's like you keep moving from that space. You keep remembering the feelings that you're trying to invoke, you know, with your purpose and with your impact and things like that, because it's all going to work out, you know? And so, yeah, I mean,
it will.
It has really
I can
helped
see
my
it
business.
because I see the, like, number one thing, and, you know, whether people want to believe it or not, is the passion.
Yeah.
If you don't have that passion, you know, you will be in business, and because the fumbles are so many and so often and so random, you say, I'm just going to give up. And the reason why you give up, because that passion is not there. It's just not there. You don't have anything holding you to
there,
it.
right?
You know, like if you think about it, most people that go out there and they sing or they play ball or whatever, trust me, they have that passion to do it. They have that passion, and that's why they get up in the morning and they run for hours and they play and they practice because they want to come the best. They want to be the best. And then you see when they retire, you know, their life is not the same. They're trying to find a purpose now because that passion about that was there, you know. And so you have that passion. And all of the things that you're experiencing now, I know that when I was speaking with you, you know, we were talking about your growth and everything, and you were like, I just feel like I'm at a standstill, and things are not moving as fast that as I want them to. Well, I had a chance to look at your stuff, and you are moving in an upward. You don't know it, but it is upward. So I want to tell you that
But even
too.
us talking,
I looked at that. Like it's upward.
Us talking and you sharing with me that just being vulnerable. you know, and sharing with me that, hey, we all deal with this. Like, you know, like it just, like literally that day, my switch like went from that to like, she right. Like, you know, like we're about to do this. Like we're gonna make this happen. Like we all going through this, okay? It's not just me. You know, and you know, I needed that encouragement and just that you didn't have to be vulnerable and share that with me. And I think that even in the work that I do and in the spaces, that vulnerability is important too, because you know, like you said earlier, you look at me and you think, oh, she's just got it all together and all this, and we've discovered that I am a 11th grade failure, that I am a convicted felon.
You and me both on the 11th grade thing, though. You and me both on the 11th grade thing. Don't worry, it's okay.
Oh, you came out in 11th?
I flunked 10th and 11th.
Oh, did you?
I did. That's a story for another time. It's okay.
Oh my God!
10 and 11th. Oh my God!
And then
That's
I got 11 credits in one quarter in order to graduate on time.
Oh, wow.
I had to do 11.
But hey, you
going
buckled
hard,
down.
man.
See, I'm now.
I didn't have a life for 10 weeks straight doing all those tests. It was
you
bad.
made it happen though.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
what it is. You gotta try.
And you know what? With everybody, you have something. I have been, ever since I was a little kid, I have been an overachiever. And people that's overachiever are, I'm going to tell you right now, they are the worst.
Yeah.
They are the worst. Do you hear me? I drove my mom crazy. I drove my family crazy. You know, I was in dance, and if I couldn't get anything, I couldn't sleep. So I would dream about it. And then in the middle of the night, honestly, true story, in the middle of the night, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I would wake up screaming, I got it, and I'm dancing in the middle of the floor, proving that I got it. I mean, overachievers are the worst. And listen, I'm being completely honest. They are the worst. When I was
you're hard on yourself.
Yeah. And when I was in college, I made everybody, you know, I can remember a time of taking a class, and it was a very hard class. There were 25 students in the class, and there's one class, and only 3 people passed the class, and I was one of them, and I passed with a B. I think it was a B minus, and I was livid, and I was arguing with the teacher, and it's like, I have to retake the final, and he's like, you're not going to retake the final. I went to the student, you know, the people that's over the class, and I was like, he has to allow me to redo this test, because I deserve an A, because this reason why and that reason why, and pulling out my notes and all of this stuff. And he was just like standing there, and I never forget it. He stood up and he's like, I'm not going to do this. There's 25 students. We only have 3 that pass. And she's one of the ones that pass. And I'm sitting here with her to go through this. He's like, this is ridiculous. I'm out of here. You know, and at that time, I'm on the phone with my husband, and I'm crying to my husband, and I'm crying to my mom, and they're looking at the phone like, why are we having this conversation? Like, she literally passed the class, and I could not. It took weeks for me to let it go and say, Sheila, you have to deal with having this B. And they are the worst. Everything that I do, I'm so emotional about it. It has to make sense to me. And if I can't get it to make sense, I can't get past it. So that's the worst type of people. You know, that's the worst type of people. And I'm here to say it, you know, for all of you overachievers, I hate to put us on blast, but we are the worst. You know, we are the worst people to deal with, you know. And I thank my mom all the time, because she put up with me, you know. She dealt with me, and my husband's, they deal with me, because it's the same. It's very difficult to deal with people like that.
I was listening to this lady say, she was talking, it was online the other day, and she's a coach or whatever, and she's just like, you know, everybody that I'm speaking with, you know, every client that I have, no matter if they're here, like, everybody is dealing with something, you know, they're struggling with something. Like, you know, And I think that sometimes when we think that we should always be good, it's like you have to accept that this is the wheel of life, the wheel of fortune. You know, there's ups, there's downs, there's fumbles, there's touchdowns. Like, and whenever you have that expectation of how things are going to be, then it's not so like destructive whenever things don't go your way. And I think it helps me to remain grateful whenever I am in the good moments, because when I'm in a bad moment, I'm gonna go by really fast, you know. But I'm like, when I'm in a good movement, I want to slow this down. So it's like, be present, be here, like enjoy this. And you know, like we were saying, I just have to sometimes shift my perspective to say like, okay, what do I have good that's happening for me? What opportunities do I have that could, you know, change my life tomorrow? Because one thing I will say I learned in business is that your network is your net worth, you know, and just putting myself in different spaces and showing up in different places has helped me. If I'm around the right people, then I'll be able to grow. Like you said, you know, I'll be able to get opportunity. I mean, I have met some people who have given me opportunities because they see me, right? They see my heart, they see who I am, and just strictly based off of that, they want to see me win, you know? And I think, and that brings me back around, because networking is really big in business, right? And some people, they just hate it. You know, it's
me.
It's the same.
Oh, you hate it too?
Yeah.
It's because
I have a problem.
It can be that way though. And and I have recently started getting myself back out there because I have to at this point. Like, and people give up and their business fails and stuff is because you're not willing to keep work. Like, what are the things that you were doing in the beginning that you need to be doing again now? Because once we get in it and we're gone, we get a little spoiled, and now we're not in the basics like we were before. When we didn't have clients, we had all the time in the world. We listening to all the Eric Thomas motivational speeches. We listening to all the podcasts. We doing all of these things, doing all the research or whatever, because we have time. We have no clients, right? Yeah. But then when we get busy working in our business, we don't do that stuff anymore. And those are the things that keep us going. So recently I've been, you know, networking more, but I'm smarter about my networking, right? I do things that, you know, I really connect with on a personal level, so that I'm meeting people that I actually enjoy, or I'm, you know, meeting people and making genuine connections with them, right? But what I will say is that I was like closed in for a little bit, because you may meet that one or two people that make you uncomfortable, or that make you question yourself, or that make you feel some type of way. And it's so easy to like really hone in on them because they're so annoying. You're like, you don't let it go because you're like, this person just really rubbed me the wrong way.
That's so
and
specific.
Now,
I feel like you can see a face right now in your head.
now you don't want to go networking anymore because you're afraid you're going to meet another person like that, right?
Yeah.
But then when you meet a really awesome person, you don't do that. You don't think like, hey, there's more awesome people like this. It's always that one person ruined it for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so I just have really had to shift my perspective and putting myself in those places. And I told this to you. I said this recently on my page. I'm like, don't be naive enough to think that there aren't people that are preying on your downfall, but you best believe that there's someone ready to bless you in their face. You know, you meet the right person, they can really put you in the right position. And if you are, you know, moving from the right space, and you are, like you said, passionate, and you are dedicated, and you have a mission, like, and you align with someone who also has that same mission and wants to see that go forward, like, so much can happen, you know. And it's like I'm being reminded now where I'm at is that, Stephanie, that's just who you are, you know. Not everybody can be personable or get along with anybody. So it's like I need to take that blessing that I have for myself and use it to my best ability to help me, you know, instead of like letting people, you know, make me feel like I have to suppress myself or feel like I can't shine or I can't, you know. And I see so many people deal with this.
I'm not going to shrink. I'm not going to shrink back. And, you know, that's one thing that I do have an issue with. You know, I'm invited to a lot of stuff and I don't go. And the reason why I don't go is because I know me. So like you gave the example of meeting someone and that person rubs you the wrong way. In a situation like that, I can't be quiet. And so sometimes not being able to be quiet, it can hurt you. No, seriously. No, seriously.
No, I believe
it
you.
I
can
know.
really hurt you.
I know.
You know,
Yeah.
because
It's true.
well, Tim, you know.
I know.
If something happens, I'm quick and I'll be like,
You can't
okay,
hide. You can't hide it
know,
on your face.
right? And,
Everyone's
my
gonna know.
face is that way, and it's like this simple.
Yeah.
You know, you said that. Now, based off of what you said, now what am I supposed to take from that? What point were you trying to make from that? And then they say, oh, well, I didn't mean it that way. Well, what way did you mean it?
Yeah, it's nothing.
I need to figure out what way that you mean it. And so sometimes putting people on the spot like that, you can see their whole facial. I've been in it, and you see their whole facial, their whole facial disposition changes, and now it's more like, oh, they're on that defense. And now mine's changing.
Yep.
That's exactly where I wanted you to be. So now let's get to it. Okay? Let's get to it. And so that's one of the biggest things on why, and everyone that knows me, that really, really, that even my clients, they know me where they'll tell people that they refer, if you don't want to hear the truth, don't go to her. But she's gonna tell you,
It's not. It's not.
I don't think. That's
Sometimes it is.
But the people who can't handle it ain't the ones that's supposed to be around you.
Yeah, because they'll say, she's a straight shooter, and don't go in there telling her, oh, can you do this for me because somebody told me to do that, and it's not in the rules or the laws that I'm governed by. Okay, then I'm going to really let you have it. Because why you coming in here asking me to commit fraud? Because nobody, you didn't work
You
as
have
hard as I did.
boundaries.
Right.
That's what that is.
And so sometimes when I'm invited to things, I do, I'll because I've had speaking events where I had to travel for. I literally will go and I'll research and I'll look at the pictures from the previous, events, and I'll just look at it and I'll see how things are, and the pictures can really give you, it can give you a lot of input on what's going on. Like it can tell you that, it's cliquish things. I don't like to go to.
I don't think that it's wrong that you're using your discernment though. Like,
No.
Yeah, it's not.
depending, what you want, but also like, don't rob us of being able to be around you and we like you because
Right.
this person can't handle you. No.
Yeah.
Let us still be able to experience you. You know what I'm saying? Because the right people are going to, you know what I'm saying? Just like even in these, I was just telling a friend of mine this morning, even in those spaces, like, in these honorees and stuff, right? I've connected with who I've connected with, right? I'm not forcing any connections. Like things happen organically, like, and I used to have an old business coach who'll be like, same thing. You need to go here. You need to do this. You need to connect with this person. I already met that person. We didn't connect. If I was supposed to connect with them, we would have connected. They know me. They know what I'm doing, but they don't want to fool with me, okay? That's fine. That's okay with me.
And that's the problem, too, with a lot of the networking when I did. So, okay, I've been asked to, for example, speak at certain events. And when I go there, they sort of tell you what they want you to talk about and everything. And for example, one was for a women's event, and they wanted me to come and speak and talk about my story, give my story. And so my thing was, well, what am I talking about my story for? How is that going to help them? That's my story. I'm not empowering anyone because I had a story and I succeeded. That's not something that I'm going to do. Now, if you want me to come and I can speak and I can talk to them and I can talk to them about things that's going to help them to be empowered, that's something that I can do. But a lot of times when you do speaking events, they want you to get up there and they want you to tell your story. That's why my mentor was just like, okay, in order for me to get the money that I want to get for you to speak, you got to finish your book. You got to do these things. And I did those things, but at the same time, it becomes a problem because there's things, like you said, I got boundaries. There's things that I'm not going to do because I don't feel you know, and I could be wrong, but I don't feel my story is going to empower nobody. That's my story. I went through it. I struggled through it. I did what I had to do. You know, I know the real, you know, truth about my story. I know what it took for me to get there. But that's my story. That's what it took for me to get there. If I tell you my story, doesn't mean that it's going to help you in your story, because your story is totally different. Put together something, you know, and then I go to events and I'm a speaker, and I did one event in Atlanta, and everyone that was a speaker wanted to be treated differently from all of the people that was there to hear them speak. I'm not standing on no stage and talking down to nobody. That's not who I am. I'm going to go down on the floor and I'm going to talk to them, and I'm going to sit down with them, and I'm going to touch their hand, and I'm going to mingle with them. That's not who I am. So that's something that I have to work on. I think that a lot of the events, it puts people in the position, and it awards them and everything, but then it also creates this narrative that because you're in that position, you're bigger than the next person. I don't want to be excluded from the people that came to hear me speak. Why do I want that? You know, and after I've spoken, I've seen it so many times where they crowd around you and you got people like, oh yeah, you know, and I wanted to, why am I up here? I need to go down there. I'm not staying up here, you know. And they were like, "Oh, well, as a you know, speaker, you have to sit up here. Well, don't call me back next year because I'm going down there, you know." And you know, so, and one place did not call me back, and I'm fine with that. I am absolutely fine with that.
Everybody has their levels of what they're willing to share. You know, like I'm the same way. Yes, I share things, but at the same time, I'm still a private person, right? You may not know all of you're gonna know what I want you to know. You know, and if I feel like it can help you, if you don't feel like it's gonna help somebody, then no, I'm not gonna share it. But if I feel like it's gonna help somebody,
but your story,
I'm okay with being vulnerable and sharing and connecting with the person, because now maybe they're not holding me up here no more. Maybe they now feel like I'm more relatable than, you know, just thinking I'm just this puppet.
You're telling your story, and this is exactly the point that I'm trying to make. You're telling your story, but you're telling your story and you sitting on the same level. You down here on the level. You're not telling your story and just to say, oh, that's my story, and now I'm above that.
Oh, yeah. No,
and that's the difference. And sometimes in those settings,
the ego.
That's what they create.
Yes.
In those settings, it's not you that's creating it. It's the people that's putting it together. They're creating that. And I don't like it.
Yeah, because we're not that different from everybody else.
Right.
Even if we can be successful as a leader or business owner, we're not that special. We're not. We just figured out something that works for us. Right. And we can help other people to figure it out too.
I think it's important to just be able to be like walking in your gift, right? You know, I think that to me, I don't care what it is that you do, it takes a lot of courage to pretty much, like you said, when you have that passion, you really don't give a damn what nobody else thinks. You know, they think you crazy. You like, why are you still doing this business? Like, you know, this is that and the other. And it's like having that courage to be able to just kind of like cut out everybody else and know that, I don't know, it's to me, is I'm a very spiritual person too. So for me, it's like, I know when I'm led to share and when I'm led to be quiet. That discernment that you were talking about, you know, and if you looking in those spaces and that's what it's looking like, I don't feel like you wrong for that at all. You know what I'm saying? You know who you can help and who you know who's on some other stuff or whatever. But that's also something that we learn over time too. Like in the beginning, we may not know that. We start learning how to listen to our discernment, and that's across the board, not just in business, but in relationships, friendships, all that stuff. It's like it's all like a growing process, you know. But I don't think that you're wrong at all for gauging how much you want to share, how you're going to, what you're going to be a part of, because also your reputation is still on the line too. And so if they're, you know, with the mean girl stuff or whatever, you're connected to that, then it's like, you know, So it is important to like do your research and make sure that people are, you know, because women empowerment, I do feel like has been like really oversaturated, right? And a lot of mean girls are women empowerment.
Oh my God.
They don't know. Yeah.
You would not believe it. And I see it, and it's like, you know, I was just having a conversation, you know, really quick about, you know, musicians and stars and stuff like that, and you meet them, and sometimes when you have a conversation with them, you're like, oh, you know, like they were down to earth, you know. And then sometimes like I know a lot of stars. I've met a lot of stars, like big stars, because my daughter then was in that industry. And I, you know, one time we were out, and my best friend saw this one, you know, actor, and she said, well, can I take a picture with you? And the woman was just like, well, no, you know. And then turned around, she needed something from my group. So she had to come and she had to speak to me or whatever. And so then, you know, I took care of what I needed to take care of. And at that same time, she was like, you want to take a picture? You know, like, and she asked me if I wanted to take a picture with her. And I was like, no, I don't want to take no picture with you. You know, and my best friend's looking at me like, you know, and I was like, she was like, why you want to take a picture with her? Same reason why she didn't want to take one with you.
Right.
You know, you put yourself up here. You're still down here. You're just on TV. Come on, people. You know, you have to be, you know, human. But at the same time, I've taught my daughters them, because she was out there and she was, you know, working with big people in the industry. I'm like, they ain't no different from you. You know, and that's the way that you have, when you go in the room, you don't be running, oh, you know. And so when I was having a conversation with my daughter the other day, she said, Mom, there's nobody you would do that for. And I was like, no, not really. Probably Snoop Dogg, though. Because I love Snoop Dogg. I'd probably be like, Snoop Dogg.
But you know, it's funny that you bring that up too, because when I'm working with the 4th and 5th graders, right?
Yeah.
It actually starts at a very young age. I see it already. That type of competition and things like that between the young girls, right? But that's why it's so important for us to be there and be in the schools and reminding them that, hey, as young girls, you know, you may not understand that whenever we do go into womanhood, we need each other to support and uplift each other, because we're all facing some of the same challenges, you know, that are particular to us as women, you know? Right. And so it's like you start teaching them, and I tell those girls, a lot of the lessons that we're teaching you guys, there's adults that still struggle with this, you know, with self-esteem, with self-love, because part of the reason why people are mean is because they may not be comfortable with themselves. They see others through the lens of who they are, right? So if you're kind of like, to people, then you assume that people are like that to you, you know? And so it's like,
I never thought about it that way.
It's all of our internal, you know, projections and things like that. And it's part of, I feel like that's why I'm able to move in a lot of spaces, because I have a lot of compassion and grace for people, right? Because people don't act like that because they want to. They have been hurt. They have experienced something, and it's not personal.
You said they think that they need to be
that way.
Yeah, they
think that they need to be
to protect themselves. You know, and it is not something to be upset at a person about. You know, it is disappointing sometimes, but at the same time, it's like you have those moments too where you aren't always on, or you aren't always in your best character. And so you have to, like, when you point the finger, it's always 3 pointing back at you. So it's almost like you have to be able to extend that compassion and grace. And I definitely know that I have not always been that person, right? Yoga has changed my life. So, you know, part of my business also is being a trauma-aware yoga instructor, right? So, being able to allow people to be who they are and will also allow me to be who I am, right? Like, that's how you do things. It is what it is.
And that's just accepting people for who
you
they
know,
are.
I gotta let you
Yeah.
do. You're gonna have to deal with that. Really, not me. I think a big thing in business too is not taking things personally. Really, in life.
Yes.
In life,
You say,
period.
and not taking it personal.
You don't take things personally because people got all kinds of stuff going on with them, okay? Look, when I think about myself as an individual and the things that I battle with within myself, I'm like, and I'm actually working on myself. If you ain't working on yourself, now it's a mirror. It's like, this is what I would be if I wasn't doing those things, if I wasn't doing the inner work, if I wasn't paying attention or being self-aware or anything. This is the result, you know? And so I don't get upset. To be honest with you, sometimes I feel bad for people. That's where that, you know, compassion and grace or whatever comes in. And then I don't want to harbor that, and I don't want to keep that on me also, because it's just not going to help me move forward. Like, I practice so much detachment in my life, it's ridiculous. Like, seriously, because we really underestimate how easy it is to walk away from a situation. We're always attached to things and outcomes, and we want things to be this way and that way, and then sometimes you just gotta let shit be what it is. You know, it is what it is, and it's just less stressful to just be in the present. And so I think that really helps me navigate through, like, even those I have those moments or whatever, but I still, like, I have to talk myself back to a good place, surround myself surround myself with people who are going to remind me who I am. Remind me that, you know, my business doesn't define me. You know, who am I, Stephanie, at the core? Like, am I a good person? Am I showing up for the people the way that I'm supposed to? Like, if my business fails, I'm never going to feel like I'm a failure. Because at the end of the day, I know who I am. I know where, you know, and like you said, when you're passionate, that's why it happens that way. And a lot of times, because you have that, you are successful still, you know, but.
So we have come to the end. We don't went
Man,
over.
we had a good
conversation.
No, that was good.
We're getting all excited.
I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to stop.
So,
before this, me and you, I said, this is a podcast session right here.
So, but I want you to look at the camera, and the first thing I would like for you to do is to give advice to anyone that's coming into entrepreneurship. What advice would you give them to make sure of, you know, before they jump out there and they do it?
I would say that the number one thing, if you are going to be an entrepreneur, because this is you're the business, right? You have to focus on getting better yourself. The self-improvement, the mindset is like the number one thing, because if you could have all those resources, like I said, all these things around, but you're paralyzed because you just don't have that self-belief. You don't have the confidence because you don't keep promises to yourself, you know? And so it's really like, that's probably like the biggest thing that I can say is work on yourself, on your physical, on your mental, on your emotional, on your spiritual, like, because, you know, part of my mission is to really get women to adopt my personal idea of what true beauty is, right? And that is understanding the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional aspects of loving and valuing yourself, right? Because when you value yourself, you preserve yourself, you protect yourself, you honor yourself, you do the things that you want for yourself to succeed and to move forward, and you don't care about, you know, anybody else. Like, you know, I think you learn that if I'm not taking care of myself, I really am not worth anything to other people. There's going to be resentment. There's going to be all these things that are in place. So it's like constantly working on yourself. Self-improvement is so important. That's the first thing, because the first thing people are going to do is try to talk you out of it. They're going to knock you down. And a lot of the times it's not even malicious, right? The things that people project onto you, it ain't even from a malicious place. Sometimes they just naturally, you know, sometimes people care about you, they worry about you, and they project negative things onto you, right? Sometimes people want some stuff for themselves that they just don't believe in themselves, and then they start projecting that negative energy onto you, right? And there's just all these things. You can't take it personal. You have to be sound within who you are, on yourself, what you're working on, because you know, even in a like a physical weight loss journey, right? a lot of the times people feel like crap. They don't feel like they look good. They start working out. They probably only lost like 2 pounds, right? But they have the confidence that they're showing up for themselves every day. So now they start feeling like, oh, wait, I kind of see a little, because, you know, I've been working, or is that just me? That's that Leo stuff again. I work out 2 days and I'm like, okay, it's working.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, you just definitely have to build yourself up. You build you up because you have to be strong. And I know right now everyone's in their soft girl era, and it's like the soft era don't come until after you put the work in. Okay.
Yeah.
The biggest human weakness is wanting something for nothing. You cannot want something for nothing.
God.
You have to work.
It's true.
You have to work.
Yep.
And I deal with it a lot because I see a lot of people come into the beauty industry because they think, oh, you're making so much money doing lashes. Oh, this girl's making money doing that. Not even just this industry. They see somebody doing something, making money, and like, oh, I want to do that because they're making money. All right. But what are you good at? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you have to really, that's why I feel like I'm very blessed to be able to work in what I feel like is my purpose, right? I'm a natural cheerleader. I'm a natural, we're going to blow you up, pump you up. You got this. You could do this. Like, but even me being that person, I have those moments of feelings of inadequacy.
Yeah.
I have those moments of, you know, questioning, downing, whatever, because we're human. So you have to be intentional about constantly working. In those times where I have been in those spaces because I fell off from working on myself. I fell off from being intentional about what my day-to-day is going to look like. I fell off from being intentional about encouraging myself, about giving myself positive self-talk instead of being negative to myself. So work on you. You want to be an entrepreneur? Work on you.
Huh?
All right? You have to learn to master you first.
So now, secondly, I would like for you to look at that camera and tell them how they can get in touch with you. Tell them about your business. Tell them where your social media is. How can they get in touch with Stephanie?
All right. Well, you guys can find us on Facebook or Instagram at Squad Beauty Professionals, or online at squadbeautyprofessionals.com. My personal Instagram is Say That Steph. And I share a lot of my just journey through self-awareness, self-expression, and self-acceptance there. And we are located in Spring Valley of Las Vegas, close to Flamingo and Durango. But yeah, come out and see us. We got a little bit of everything. We have permanent makeup, we have aesthetics, we have natural hair care, hair loss restoration, we have other estheticians, and then we also have nail techs.
One second. Okay.
Yeah, but you know, we kind of try to have
nail
techs. Yeah, we try to have all of the self-care services under one roof to just make it easy, save you time, and just kind of be able to take care of everything in one place.
And are you working on anything special right now that you want them to know about?
I do host a community yoga class every week on Mondays at 9:30 in Pioneer Park. And really, we just moved to this new location, so we're really just trying to immerse ourselves in that new community, right? Where we were before. We made lots of great clients, but we've also lost some in moving, you know? So I love this new area. This is really our first storefront because our other places were like in office buildings or, you know, we were in New Orleans Square. So now having an actual storefront just gives us way more visibility to new clients.
And do you take walk-ins?
Yes. So we do take walk-ins, but it is very much a better idea to go on our website and schedule an appointment, right? Because you just never know who's going to be available if you just walk in. But, you know, if somebody's there and they're available, we got you. But yes, go to our website, squadbeautyprofessionals.com, and you can book a appointment. We just require a deposit, and then we'll take care of you whenever
Deposits
you come
are
there.
always
Deposits
good.
are good, you know? That's a pointer in business.
Yeah.
You know, are you appointment based? Make sure you're getting your deposits.
Yeah, deposits are always good. You know, and so to all of you guys out there listening, we thank you for listening in. We thank you for your comments. Please post, and if you have any questions, please ask those questions. We welcome it. If you are an entrepreneur and you have your own business, we want you sitting here. So hit us up and on Instagram. You can also my Instagram is the She Wins 1919. You can hit me up, or you can hit Timothy. He has to tell you what his site is. You can hit him up if you want to be a guest on our show. We welcome everyone, even if your business is not as successful as you want it to be. You are the people that we want to sit on this couch, because this is a platform to help all business and entrepreneurs, become successful, giving you the tools that you need to, not make those same mistakes that we made, because they are out there. Mm-hmm. So thank you guys for, listening to this episode, and come back next week for our next episode.